Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Joanne Lisosky, author and journalism educator, and we're here today to talk about issues of importance to the Caucasus. With me today is Alex Raufoglu, American Azerbaijani journalist, and thank you for joining us today, Alex. We're lucky that you've just returned from the Ukraine, so you have some pertinent information about this heated conflict that we're hearing about. Can you update us on what the latest information is?
Yes, of course, John. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I went to Ukraine along with several foreign reporters in town to establish some secure channels in terms of, how to vet the information that's coming out of the country, and in case situation worsens in Ukraine, what to do, whom to trust, and how to fight back disinformation, because we happen to realize that Putin always sends disinformation before he sends his army. And we went to Kyiv, albeit we had to, it was a brief trip. We were supposed to leave the country last weekend. So we met to Lviv, and I had the chance to talk to people living in the south and the west, and then we had to unfortunately leave the country earlier than we were supposed to stay.
So this whole idea of disinformation, it suggests that the US media and some of the Western media has really been promoting this deceptive strategies that you talk about, this disinformation. And some have said that this has really thrown Putin off his game. So what do you think about that?
First of all, it comes straight out of Putin's playbook. I was born in the Soviet Union. We know what it means. We know how they weaponize information against a wider region before, again, they attack. Information, unfortunately, moves the narrative. In this case, Putin is, he has been winning this game, because just take a look at this narrative going on. Entire Western audience sees this current situation as some sort of like fight between Russia and the West over NATO, which is completely trumped up and made up by Putin, and it's far beyond what is going on on the ground. Ukrainians are really worried about that, because first of all, this was not supposed to be a year of extension for NATO. NATO and Ukraine are far apart, probably like 10 years, maybe in horizon. Ukraine was planning to, work on, its democracy. It has so many challenges to overcome before actually becoming NATO member. But somehow this narrative, has been winning, and you can see Putin is asking for security, for NATO extension. But this rather was supposed to be, actually not supposed to be, this rather was announced to be the year of action for democracy. Remember, Ukraine was part of the Democracy Summit. Russia was not, in December. And I just posted on Twitter a couple of days ago that Ukrainian president provided with a list of obligations to the US and to other countries, how to boost democracy in his country. Just by going through those lists, you could understand what exactly Putin's problem is. This is about democracy's extension, not the NATO extension. And unfortunately, nobody did talk about that. The wider narrative is somehow, is particularly winning on Putin's side. But what if, Putin doesn't stop? What if he starts talking about, European Union extension, or he already started talking about actually current members of NATO, and everyone understands that Putin is trying to pitch, build up his strongly pretext to attack, something that he has done before. He did same thing in Georgia. Luckily, people, particularly in this town, start understanding that the whole notion of Saakashvili attacked first, and he was committing genocide. And Putin had no choice but fighting back in 2008 was lie, and now people are questioning Georgia's position at that time. Moldova went through the same problem. Armenia, Azerbaijan, I would argue that we did go through the same problems, but because it was before the internet world, we still had no idea where this information was coming from and who was driving both countries towards war. But Putin has done that in Ukraine for a long time. In 2014, when Putin attacked, it did work somehow because there's this understanding in the West that Ukraine is divided between Russian-speaking pro-Russian people and English-speaking pro-Western people. That was not my observation, to be honest. When I was on the ground, I met with so many Russian-speaking people, and not only Russian-speaking, formerly working for the Soviet Union and Russian government in their military and other, government.
And we call those separatists, right?
Exactly. I mean, some of them, they are, basically painted as separatists, but they are not necessarily separatists. They talk about, obviously some sort of like Russianness and some sort of identity, but overall things have been shifting since 2014, and I'm not sure if Putin is aware of that. 2014 war built up some, identity among Ukrainians. People started thinking about becoming a Ukrainian. The way Putin, drafted his article last year, this time, and was trying to depict how Ukrainians are technically Russians, coming from similar backgrounds. That is not a narrative that the Ukrainians want to subscribe to, and they don't want to align themselves with anything that coming out of Kremlin, particularly when it comes to becoming Ukrainians. Now they are Western Ukrainians. They don't see themselves at all by any means under umbrella of Russia's influence. They don't see themselves as a buffer zone. That's what Putin wants to us to think about Ukraine and other parts of the region. That we are not nations, we are not even countries. We are just buffer zones for him, to divide Russia from the West. That is not the case. And most importantly, they know that what they're fighting for, and they just want the West to start seeing that this is a fight for democracy, stability, and freedom. This is not a fight for NATO, nor for European Union. That is what Putin wants us to talk about. Putin wants us to think about. But just take a look, step back and think about last year, this time, he was trying to do the same thing. He was hoping to convert Ukrainian leadership. That's what he did in, again, other parts of the region. He already has all his hands on Belarus. Belarus is not even a country right now because he has his army, his influence, he's the decision maker. He wants to impose that, on Ukraine as well. And Ukrainians are seeing it and they are united. Another thing I realized, and it was unbeknownst to me, I hadn't been there for a long time, that there's a strong Ukrainian journalism, and people are really fighting back against disinformation, and they trained their eyes and ears against Putin's playbook, and they can detect the lies, they can talk about it. There's a debate going on there, but the problem is Western audience doesn't have access to, full access to the reality. They unfortunately see it either from the Western, particularly from the US perspective, and from Putin's narrative, and that's the unfortunate situation in this case.
Well, and you make a good point. US has access to Russian television with RT and everything like that. We don't have as much access to Ukrainian television. But it sounds like the administration, the Putin administration, is doing its very best to try to get the information from the Ukrainian side and promote that as here, this is the correct information. People are not running scared away from their homes. They are loading up trains with children, and these are fake narratives. There was a bombing, but no, it was just one car that was destroyed. So as far as the U.S. national media, they have been encouraged by the Biden administration to really promote the fact that this is disinformation. But the Russian people don't have access to Ukrainian television either, right?
They do not, and you're putting actually your finger on the core of the problem here. For a long time we were talking about, even 2 years ago, when it came to Azerbaijan and Armenian, back then conflict. We in the region are fighting back when it comes to disinformation with one hand behind. We don't have resources, tools, because Putin and his cronies in the region have taken them away from us. And for a long time, they were doing two different, let's say, like functional jobs here. And very interestingly, it was working in different parts of the region and eventually in Ukraine as well. In Azerbaijan, for instance, they convinced the government, and through the government, the people, that Western media acts just like the same way Russian media does. They're the same devils. We have to get rid of all of them. And then as soon as they manage to get rid of Western media organizations, they start planting their own, like Russian media organizations. There's only one major foreign and, let's say, reliable source of information in Azerbaijan is Russian media. Same thing has been happening in Ukraine, unfortunately, but this was not just only the government backed operation. Unfortunately, people here in the Western capitals also came to decide a decision that a couple of years ago that Ukraine is not a high priority. The way they were parking Putin last year, this time, they were going to talk about China and other parts of the region, were not Russia anymore, because that's not number one priority. Western media had abandoned Ukraine, Moldova, and other countries, Baltics, for a long time. There's so many obviously problems are assigned with but they come from the hill. It's about financial and other concerns coming. It's a full package of concern that we have been putting together and flagging for a long time to the administrations. But luckily, good enough. I mean, when I was in the region, I realized that the fact that Western media organizations are back. I mean, Kyiv, I saw so many reporters from European countries, from the US. We couldn't find a hotel, room, because it was full of reporters. All the hotels were taken by, media crews, which is very good news. But at the same time, you're right. The Russian media, Russia has two, let's say, very powerful campaigns here that they go side by side. One is internally, they are trying to take over media organizations. And another one is internationally. RT and Sputnik, as you know, that have been already pushing the Russian narrative beyond the Soviet Union. They are, posing themselves as many people in the US think that RT is a libertarian TV channel, so they have no idea where this is coming from. Sputnik, same thing. I want to give a credit at this point to the State Department for coming up with a report last month. This time, it was about RT, Sputnik, and some other Russian media tools, propaganda tools. And we have been asking from European countries, from the US government, to go after these media organizations. Not as I understand that there's a press freedom also involved here. We don't need to kick them out of content the way they do that. We don't, but at the same time, letting the people know who they are and what they are fighting for is important. Media literacy matters. Anyone, before turning RT and Sputnik on, will go back to State Department's report and see what they have been doing, how RT's timeline of RT's development was matching with the wars going on in the country. What they did in Georgia, what they did in Ukraine in 2014, what they did in Moldova, including in Azerbaijan, Armenia, and right now what they're doing in Ukraine. This is very important, and I'm glad that you are seeing it. I hope many in this town will start seeing it after now.
Well, and I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about cyber attacks. That's something that we have been talking about quite a bit in this country. There are a lot, I guess, many banks are being alerted to the possibility of cyber attacks in this country. I know in the Ukraine, they're dealing with cyber attacks from Russia. Is this something that, I know it's not new, but I'm sure that the Russians have gained a lot of knowledge on how to do this in the last few years. Is this something we should be significantly concerned about?
We should, and also I'm glad that administration has been concerned about. Yesterday, there was a press conference in the White House. There's a cyber security advisor to the president at the National Security Council. She made it clear that the latest cyber attacks coming from Russia, and this was very quick investigation has been going on. I'm glad that they're flagging it. I'm also glad that back, in Ukraine, people are noticing that. They are comparing with 2014 events, and also, even way back before Georgia war, what the Russians did in Estonia, that the US did not take it seriously. Not only the US, actually, lots of European Union members did not take it seriously. They called Estonia Russophobe for bringing this up. But now things are changing. People see that cyber security is number one concern. But another thing is that the administration has been doing something different lately, which I do want to recognize and talk about a little bit. Ukrainians also have been seeing that. When it comes to cyber and other versions of Russian attacks, the administration has been pushing maximum disclosure policy. There's a joke in town right now that you don't have to have, some special security to read presidential briefing, every morning, because you can open the media and say everything's out there, which is actually right diplomacy. I think this is working, because we have to recognize the fact that this is not traditional, dictator is using previous century's rules, to, attack his neighbors. This is Putin, the 21st century bully in the Kremlin. He's bullying around. And the way he does that is quite almost, it's at almost speed. And the only way to stop him is to go after him, to tell him what to know about him. I see how Russian media is like mocking the US intelligence information about this week that on Wednesday attack did not happen. But I want to push back by saying that the fact that attack did not happen on Wednesday is a victory, because that's the goal. Whole idea of putting that information out there was to prevent the war, not to sit back and expect whether it's going to happen or not. I think this is the right diplomacy. Yesterday they came out and said that the Russia is behind that, and also we have to be prepared for as you mentioned banging, and also I would actually highlight the military system as well, because it's not too late for Ukrainians to sit back and think about how to move, put out some plan together, and how to move transition some of the military process to pre-internet, maybe like pre-computerized form, because this is going to happen, and you have to be capable enough to fight back. But this maximum resistance is really speaking to me, coming from journalism. I am all for openness. I've been enjoying that, and I'm so glad that administration has been so transparent at this point. But this is also an uncharted territory, because we have never seen that before. Let's recognize that. This is something new. And except for Osmanqizi TV channel, I haven't seen media doing that. I mean, we have been doing it in Azerbaijan. We go out and tell Aliyev regime what we know about their next steps, and what they do. Well, just like Putin is not going to prove Biden right, so Aliyev is not going to prove us right, and then sends out his trolls to tell us, see, you were liars. Whole idea of you putting it out together was based on lie. But President of the United States would not come out and talk to people, just like it was yesterday and also 2 days ago. Just like the presidents do that prior to the war or something extraordinary big events, and tell the people that I know the war is going to happen, I know that Putin is going to attack Kyiv, without having solid intelligence information. We have seen, like, how Biden administration officials, diplomats come out and update us with the numbers of, military forces. Like last night, the latest number was 190,000 that they gathered around, Ukraine. And that is again, that's very interesting that it's happening for the first time. I will give that credit to them. It does look like they start understanding the 21st century bullies. And something I don't even know how to name them yet. Some call them democrators, some call them, illiberal, elected officials, whatever you call them. But they are bullies. And everyone knows that Putin, like that was a sentiment when I was in Ukraine, among many, that Putin is just bluffing around. He's gonna, stop at some point, but he just wants to scare us and wants to achieve something by just, bullying around. But my argument against that was that, if this is bluff, this is the most expensive bluff that our history has ever seen. John, I'm talking about millions of, thousands of dollars involved. I'm talking about 190,000 on the soldiers. I mean, and the problem is not about the amount of troops that are involved. The problem is that they are moving forward. Even inside Ukraine, you would see that everyone's, really reluctant, and they see how much, disinformation, along with their, other, let's say, spying and also, you mentioned cyber and other tools that are just moving. They're always trying to target the targets. Yesterday, U.S. intelligence came up with very important, report that Foreign Policy wrote an article about that, which was how they have been putting together a list of most prominent Ukrainians, including journalists and civil society leaders, how Putin wants to go after them as soon as he attacks and kill them or arrest them. These are really sensitive details that we have been hearing. But again, the way the US is right now pushing back with maximum disclosure policy is quite extraordinary, and I'm so eager to see the next. But I am so glad that this is working. I also want to mention that there's time sensitivity involved here. The fact that this diplomacy has been working this week is a huge victory, because Russia can't really maintain its forces, all this multi-million dollars cost military operation for more than a month, or maybe it's a matter of weeks. That part of Ukraine, where I've talked about it for a long time, that is a very sensitive place. You can't really use your hardware forward, move them forward once weather becomes warmer. This is a time that every single day matters. That's why President Biden coming out and saying, I know what you're doing this weekend. I know what you're going to do the next couple of days, and putting, he has never seen this before, this strategy, and trying to obviously, you can deny him the pretext of fighting and invading Ukraine. That's something we missed in 2014. That's something we missed before in Georgia. One more thing about this administration is that President Biden comes from Obama administration. He was in charge. He was in charge of Ukraine policy. Remember, in 2014, the administration knew so many things. Intelligence, information was out there, but they did not release them. And it caught us all by surprise. It got Ukrainians by surprise. It got the world it got the president, at that time by surprise. But right now I see a different strategy. And again, voice inside me, being a journalist, really enjoys this maximum disclosure diplomacy. But at the same time, I hope that this will work even longer, because the more it holds on, the better it is for something that is going to happen. It's going to be very tragic. At this, what we can do, we can prolong Putin's decision-making process. When we talk about decision-making in Russia, it is not just something that you could imagine coming from the Western world. In Russia, in Azerbaijan, in these kind of countries, decision-making process is about Putin, Aliyev looking at the mirror and talking to themselves, and waking up in the morning and changing his decision and saying, hey, I'm not going to attack today. Look, Biden just yesterday came out and said, I'm going to do it today. I'm going to prove him wrong today. So I believe that this president is right by saying that strategically decision was made, probably, but when it comes to, operationally, I think the US rightfully believes that it can change that date, or it can at least move it back. The more we are capable to move it back, the better it is for Ukraine, for the region, because as I said, militarily also this is justified.
That's wonderful information about this new military strategy. It really clarifies everything that's happening. And it would be something that journalists would like, because they just get more information to disseminate.
I
So, but it's
think with that, I mean, without having any security, reading all this intelligence information, it's amazing.
It's fascinating because in the past it's been don't tell anybody that we know this, right? We have to keep this to ourselves. Do not tell the public what's going on. This is military strategy information, and now it's just the opposite. We're going to tell you everything we know, and and it's not necessarily directed to the public. It's directed to Putin, right? That's who he's talking to. President Biden is talking directly to Putin. I know what you're thinking. And I'm wondering if you think there are more people who are in his close association with Putin that are revealing these things? Is he losing his power with his people that are close to him? No one knows who he talks to on a regular basis.
2 weeks ago, we heard Putin trying to justify his decision-making process by saying, I'm going to listen to my military man. You remember that? But what happened this week? Very famous Russian military generals came out. Yes, some of them are retired, but they are really, really popular among military folks. They came out and they put out statements by saying that this is not a wise decision. We should not enter Ukraine right now. That struck me because, again, those are the folks that would never, ever, go out publicly against Putin's narrative without having, number one, a decision, access to decision, because they know something exactly horrific going on. Secondly, having justified concerns about their capabilities. They keep talking about Iskandar and others, like very heavy, weighted weapons. And as you know, that Armenia tried to use it against Azerbaijan a year and a half ago, and then Armenian Prime Minister said that Iskandar was not working. And then Aliyev came back and to Putin's rescue and said, "Oh, it is working," but and then later on he said, "Oh, we found Iskandar, in Azerbaijan. Armenians used it against us." So my point is, Putin, Russian military folks, they, particular leaders, they do have. I don't have access to a source of U.S. intelligence information, but what I know is that they do. We do assume have access to high-level, Russian sources as well. But also they are outspoken about that. Second point that really struck me was that staged video came out of Kremlin mid this week. How Putin met with Lavrov and also his defense minister publicly, and it was staged up. Obviously, we know that. So him sitting there,
the big long table.
Exactly. And then Shoigu, his defense minister, trying to tell him, "Hey, yes, we are prepared, but just give us time for diplomacy." That is not what Putin would like you to see. Obviously, like I said, first of all, the fact that the U.S. has been posing this new, maximum disclosure diplomacy is an uncharted territory, not only for the U.S., only for Putin. Bully doesn't know how to respond. He just wants to prove you wrong, and that's why the U.S. strategy is. Biden was saying it, but like not really, naming the names. But he was like, "Prove me wrong. That's what I want. I don't care if I turn out to be a liar, but prove me wrong. Prove me wrong by moving your soldiers back. Prove me wrong the way he said that just sending your diplomats to a negotiating table." And that's why we understand Putin's thinking, because Putin just listening to his narrative, although he denies that he was going to attack, and then next sentence starts with claims such as Donbas genocide, all this so-called pretext that he was trying to pitch, was clear, signs that Putin is just pulling around, and at the same time he is just waiting for his moment. His ultimate goal was to divide the Western, unity. That was not only about Putin's military strategy. That was Putin's strategy for a long time against the U.S., against the West. I remember when 2016, people were in this town were talking about, Putin trying to interfere into American election process. Everyone was thinking about, oh my God, Putin stole our election. But it wasn't about stealing democracy. It was about planting a division inside the U.S. that you could weaken your enemy. In that case, you would, you would be stronger, or at least be, let's say, deemed to be stronger. That's how he now sees the Western, unity as well. He was hoping that, particularly given the last couple of years of history behind NATO, as you know, some of NATO leaders, including France, they would, go after NATO as well. They would call them, call NATO. I think the phrase that Macron used was NATO was suffering from brain and financial concerns and all the other concerns. He was hoping that his strategy would hold on at this point. Biden is not going to have time to engage, and he, particularly after Afghanistan, his perhaps stand is not strong as it used to be. Also, China factors out there, so that was his goal. And then he would attack at some point when he would I mean, if it started this Wednesday, probably would be like 30-40 days long, military operation, because like I said, you can't get in and stay in there with your heavy, tanks through Eastern Europe, particularly through eastern side of Ukraine, which is getting muddier and muddier early in April. You have to get out before weather becomes warmer. That's why strategy was to start this week, and that's what also he did in Georgia, like during the Olympics, as remember very well. All the whole world got it by surprise, and he entered and never left. That was a strategy probably, but the fact that Western or NATO and Western countries are united, and they know what he's doing, and they also know how to chase the bully, is again something new and something that needs to be recognized. And I hope that by the time Putin wakes up next day and realizes that he's gonna lose both disinformation and also military campaign, he will try to justify it to himself at some point, because people like Putin, please don't sit back and think that he needs to justify it to his people. No, he does not. He's a dictator. He doesn't care about what his people think about him. He does not need to go through parliament or just like you have in the US to tell the people why you need to attack. He's gonna do it when he thinks it's right. Just like what he was writing about like last year, this time, that Ukrainians are just sort of Russians and we deserve to live together. I hope he will understand that that's not, reflecting the truth on the ground. I was there. I saw the Ukrainian people. They have changed significantly. They are not considering themselves in this, sort of religious, whatever, identity that Putin is trying to pitch and wants us to believe in. They are purely Ukrainians, and they are fighting for democracy, for their better future. Just take a look at again what Zelensky and his administration submitted to the Democracy Summit, which is right now on the, you just can dive into the State Department's website. You can see these 4 pages long obligations, self-identified and announced identifications. Putin sees that this train is gonna be gone, but he somehow still believes that Ukrainians, at least some portion of Ukrainians, are on his side. They are not, and I hope he will understand. The sooner he understands this mere fact, the better it is for the entire world and entire region.
You mentioned Zelensky, and I want to talk about that. He's in Munich today. Was that a good idea for him to leave the country today?
We had a phone call yesterday with the senior administration official, and we heard that the US side advised him not to leave the country, even though there was a pre-planned meeting. But this was not the right time. There was a fear behind that, that he would not be able to return back. President Biden didn't leave Washington. He is staying this weekend in Washington because the key day here is the 20th of March, February, which is tomorrow. That's because, as you know, there was a pre-announced military operation going on, training in Belarus. The question is, what is going to be about prepositioning? Are they gonna move their soldiers and military equipment back or not? We heard already Belarusian officials are hinted to the fact that well, they're not obligated to move back. That means they're gonna stay in Belarus. That's why there are some concerns in the West that him leaving the country at this point would not be a wise idea. But I was happy to see him. He met with the vice president, and that was the really I would say Ukraine needs a voice, the strongest voice at this point. He's acting as like a leader that even Ukrainians had not seen in him. I met with so many let's say Poroshenko voters in Kyiv. Yeah, believe it or not, they did not vote for him. They voted for Poroshenko, but they were right now standing behind, rallying around the flag, and they all support him. They started seeing something in him. I think Putin also didn't see that version of Zelensky when he was perhaps drafting his military plans, last year this time. Zelensky is coming from the eastern side of the country. Originally, he's from there. He speaks Russian very well. Probably Putin thought that he could manipulate him because he doesn't have political, he does not come from political career, and probably that's how leaders in our part of the world are acting. They when they become accidental, let's say, presidents, they try to look for masters. Either in most scenarios they look at the Kremlin. That did not happen in Zelensky, and Putin. I think by the time he realized that Zelensky is not part of his strategy, his plans, there are so many intelligence information that came out like last couple of weeks. You could see that the ultimate goal in this strategy is to perhaps push forward some express attack and try to maybe overthrow Zelensky and implant someone else loyal to Putin, and then not attacking Kyiv. That's the best case scenario that Kremlin was working on. But the fact that West came out and published it and went after that plan, and I think they denied Putin that option. So Ukrainian people are rallying behind him, around him, and they understand that the best way to win this war, again, not war for Ukraine. They asked me a number of times that please, whenever you have a chance to talk to the Western audience, please ask them on our behalf. Please refrain from calling this the Ukraine war. This is not a Ukraine war. This is a Russia war. But at the same time, from our perspective, this is a war for democracy, for freedom, for stability. This is our war for Europe. We are actually fighting for Europe's stability, for Caucasus stability. We're fighting for you, Azerbaijanis. We're fighting for others, like in the region. Please start seeing it. So we happen to be at the forefront of this war, but this is not about us. This is about the Putin factor, that we need to really win this war together. We need to get united. I heard from so many Azerbaijanis, including those of them who live in Russia. And they reach out to us and they say, if the war is gonna break out, we're just gonna go fight for Ukraine. And I was impressed. So many people in Azerbaijan understand that they did not want to see Putin, Russia militarily inserting themselves into Nagorno-Karabakh, into the region, into Azerbaijan. But they could not raise their voice because we had president's signature in this. It was against Azerbaijan's will, but it is not going to stay in Azerbaijan. And as you can see, the fact that Putin won that war in the South Caucasus, because we fought, our soldiers died, Putin won that war. And now he is moving forward in Ukraine, and next up will be the Balkans, and then it's going to bounce back again to the Caucasus. That is a sick man, 70-year-old, soon to be 70 this year, by the way, old man is trying to mark his place in the history, which is, I don't know even how to put that, which is, I think it is perhaps, again, I want to be happy in this case, but if you think that there is a happy end to this story, that means you have not been watching.
Good point. So it's a war for autonomy too of the former Soviet Union countries, right? And to recognize, I mean, how many years has it been? And now we're still having to fight for autonomy from Russia.
I mean, one thing we refrain from seeing and also, putting in the context is colonization.
Right.
We never called it colonization. It's a Western mindset. It's about so many arguments. A lot of people tell me that Ukrainians are, white people. The Russians are white people. Why is it like supposed to be colonization? No, it is. It's not about race or anything. This is about Russia and Russians have been doing this sort of like colonization for centuries, but this is 21st century. And, Russian people have never had a chance to live in the 21st century. Putin is using multi-million dollars, wasting at the border, putting together these sham, operations, all the stuff. But look at Russian people. They never, had a chance to live in the 21st century. Ukrainians, had a chance. They, by the way, this is another part of this the EU-US misunderstanding. I would put at the very beginning of this confrontation, is that the Ukrainians, if this turns out to be a war, this will be the major, massive human rights migration, catastrophe for our part of the world. Ukrainians don't need permission to go to Europe because, based on the agreement they signed with the European Union, they don't have to apply for visa. They're gonna just, go out and drive to Poland and to other countries. Migration will be our number one concern. Secondly, human rights. Putin is not sort of a dictator that takes over and then calms down and starts focusing on, his country's future and, human rights. He just take a look at what he did in Chechnya and take a look at what he's doing in, Syria. I was talking to some of my friends here coming from, Arabic countries because unfortunately, you asked me one question about RT and other, Russian media tools. There's one interesting angle to the media propaganda that was unbeknownst to me, how he is using RT Arabic. And trolls speaking in Arabic are in the US and in other countries are finding their ways to this, particular Russia-US confrontation debate and starting to become voice for Putin. And my point is, look, at some point I had a chance to talk to one administration official, was trying to describe the conversation that Putin had with Obama during the Syria, war. Obama was trying to convince him that, hey, we need to fight for, these people's rights. There's massive human rights violation going on. There's a dictator. This guy is killing his people. Putin's argument was that's a Muslim country, and the way Muslims can be managed is you have to implant a dictator. You have to actually support a strong man. And there is no other way of management in those countries. Look at Chechnya. That's a model I used. Use that in Syria. He happened to be right, unfortunately, because that's what he has been doing, and the US backed up. In Syria, you can see that strong man, let's say, approach is working. But there was an angle involved there, which was a religious angle. As I said, it was Muslim factor. But now Ukraine is not a Muslim country. Azerbaijan is. And that's how we understand that he's seeing us, that we can't have democracy, we can't have rights, we can't really handle challenges living under democracy. We need to have strong man, dictator, taking care of us, because that's how he sees us. But the fact that he was trying to steal Ukrainian democracy in 21st century while denying that democracy to his own people, even in the midst of the pandemic and all the other, the whole world is suffering from inflation and other concerns. And this guy, 70-year-old dude, is going out there and fighting for land or for God knows what. I don't even know what his fight is for. Ego. I mean, NATO is not an issue, as I said. This is not a year of NATO extension. NATO is not. I mean, Ukrainians told me 1,000 times that the whole idea of NATO is going towards the east is It's false. It's the East trying to go to the West because of Putin. Ukrainians did not think about NATO in 2014. They started thinking about NATO after they saw what Putin was trying to do, trying to steal their democracy and steal their country. They turned to NATO, and they understood that, okay, there's a long path towards NATO. We have to work on so many challenges. You know, the fact that there is no corrupt man running Ukraine is something that bothering this guy, and he needs to change that in his neighborhood, because otherwise, how else would you explain to your own people that, you know, there's a word out there, actual word, and you can live in democratic country and you can have really better incomes? You know, these things that he's denying to his own people, and even you know, whether he moves in or not, entire Russian nation, Russian people are his hostages, and they have to just stick with that. And unfortunately, you know, as if again, I applaud the fact that the Western maximum disclosure diplomacy is out there, without really putting it out there. Tell them to talk to those people, telling them what you know about the dictators. You can't really challenge them, because the only language the bullies know is bullying them.